asked if
restate that if you would, Steve.
Okay. The question is, has the police department itself made any plans to reach out to the community of White Rock to try to mend the relationship between officers and neighbors?
Yes, they have. I've been on my phone today with a number of command staff from the police department and officers. Remember, you've heard me say many times, simply because it's true, that the police are the community and the community are the police. We invest a great deal in the community invests a great deal in the Lynchburg Police Department. This is about community relations. I do not see the issue that you've come here to talk about tonight as a police issue. It's a community issue. And we are all of us, all community members, concerned about how this community gets along together, how this community works together, what kind of community we live in. So yes, my officers are asking me, when can we go out and talk to the folks at White Rock? When can we go back to Tulip Street? When can we go on Lorraine Street? When can we touch base? And of course, we've not stopped doing that. So we'll be doing that. We may be doing it now. It's about relationships in Lynchburg. Any law enforcement agency, we're not law enforcers, we're community policers, and we're not the only ones that police this community. Our citizens do it as well.
What does community policing look like out in White Rock? How are people forming those bonds with neighbors?
It is typically every contact between two people, whether it's a police officer and a citizen or whatever, is an opportunity to develop a relationship. And that's really, as we've discussed, I think, several times in our conversations, it's that relationship that polices the community, not having a police department, not even having engaged citizens. It's that relationship of working together. We're a team. We're partners. And the tragedy, and that's the only word for something like this, the tragedy of a sudden death situation is that it has partners in fear, partners who are confused. I think primarily in this case partners, and I'm one of them, who don't have all the information we'd like to have at this point. We all know that lack of information can foster sorrow, it can foster fear, it can even foster anger. And we need to get information out as clearly as we can, as quickly as we can, to remedy that situation. We're partners. We have to act like partners. We have to get along like partners.
You've heard, I'm sure, some of the things that people in the neighborhood are saying about this incident and just generally about how they feel they are treated by police. Can you tell us a little bit about how you all think that you got to that point?
Well, again, we certainly have people. Sometimes they're people who've been arrested. Sometimes they're people who have views for whatever reason, who question police methods and question police response. Frankly, the people who've been calling me for the last 3 days have been people who've been very supportive of police actions in that neighborhood. A gentleman called me twice to say, you might have been over there because I called you, and I'll call you again, and I expect you to come when I call. That again is that dynamic of partnership and trust. Partners don't always agree. One partner can even disappoint another partner or do something that another partner doesn't understand. But again, that doesn't mean we're not partners and aren't all responsible for making this a great community.
How is it harder for police when the people in the neighborhood don't trust them? I imagine that affects efforts to keep the community safe, correct?
The one thing I can't do as chief of police is generalize quite that broadly, because quite frankly, that's not been my experience. Elements of the community, we've heard them in the last few days, are concerned, they're frightened, they're unsure of what's happened, they're angry, some of them. Other members of the community, as I just told you, are concerned for the opposite reasons. They say, I'd like to see more police in this neighborhood. I'd like to see people who have warrants on them arrested. That's what makes a safe community. My point being that there is no community consensus, to my view, at least based on what people tell me and what I hear. You know, you have people who see it different ways, and I think that's the real challenge for any community, and certainly for this one, is that it would be nice if we could all come to a basic agreement that what's important, what our roles are, and to work together closely enough to where we trust each other enough to get through, and I'll use the word again, tragedy, which is what this is. That's my view.
Have you made any plans for having meetings with the people who live in the area like the city has? Like they have their dialogue on racism. Is Are there any plans to have?
Is there anything specific to the police department?
Again, my staff are planning various activities now. Remember, the police department, I myself, and many members of the police department participated in the dialogue situation, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. I met a lot of great people who I wouldn't have met perhaps otherwise. So again, yes, we're interested in participating in whatever is organized to do. It's our job to participate when you think about it. We're part of the community. We are also planning is the word I'll use. I've had a couple of command staff members say, look, we're going to go walk around over in that area and talk to anybody that would like to talk to us. We just want to reassure people that we're the same folks that you can call tonight if you need us, and we're here for you.
They talked about the tasers not being used. With all of your experience, Chief, how do you look at people, not just in White Rock, but we're talking about that community, but people who see things so definitely, hey, he was tased, when according to what you guys are saying, it was impossible.
He was not tased. I can't say it any plainer than that. That night, and this was one area, the mayor and vice mayor have touched on this for me. I was going to touch on it myself. The night of the 20th, I told the media that based on the information I had at that point, we had not tased Mr. Martin. The follow-up to that, which even though the state police is investigating this incident at this point, and it is less my place to talk about it for that reason, but I feel perfectly comfortable and feel it necessary to follow up on that point the next day. Tasers are electrical devices. We have people trained by the manufacturer to service the devices, to fix them, and to check them periodically. You are able to tell if a taser has been deployed. It's not a question of the chief's opinion. It's just a fact. And those tasers have not been deployed. Your question is much more significant, is how can people see the thing which is factually not? And I think it gets right back to what we've talked about a few minutes ago. It talks about community perception, and to my mind it talks about the real challenge here. I say it again, this is not a police issue, it's a community issue. How deep does our trust go? What do we do to build more trust? And I'm asking myself the same question I'm asking you. This is my responsibility as chief. What do we do to grow this garden of trust to the point that we can all reap the benefits of that? I don't have the answer. I know that, or I believe that what we have been doing with community dialogue, with every interaction, I stress to my officers, they're actually our officers, that every interaction with the citizen is a chance to sell the OPD, a chance to convince that citizen that they've got the greatest police department on earth right here, which is my belief. But how much of that is enough? Well, it's never enough. And so I think I have the answer, but perhaps it's more to it than we've managed to do so far. It always disappoints me, quite frankly, when we have what I believe is a solid relationship, and suddenly, admittedly, when a tragedy happens, and I'm not downplaying the nature of that, but a tragedy happens, and I'd hate to see it wipe all that away. I think what it does is it shocks us all. I don't think it wipes it away. Frankly, I think it just, like any other tragedy, it shocks us to a point that we reevaluate what we took for granted the day before, if that makes any sense. I think perhaps that's what happens, and I'm asking you more than I'm answering your question, but those are my thoughts on that.
What have you been telling if anything, have you been telling the S1 beat cops as they head back into the neighborhood?
I've told them a little bit of what we've talked about, Steve. I've said this is a tragedy. There is nothing more tragic than the sudden death of a community member. It affects that community member, his or her family. Frankly, I haven't heard anyone asking how the police officers are doing that witnessed the onset of this medical incident to Mr. Martin. They were devastated as well. It horrified them that this happened. It came on very suddenly. They did what they could do to try to assist him, and it wasn't enough. He died in the hospital. So it's devastated everyone. So I've told the officers that we have to have, and I'm using the words of one of my lieutenants that I heard talking to his officers, that people will react in different ways. This has shocked people. Some people are angry. Again, some people are questioning what reality really is in Lynchburg. Other people are sad, sorrowful, despondent. And unfortunately, as the mayor said, they're looking for someone to blame. I don't recommend that we blame a person who, for whatever reason unknown to me, chose to run away from the officers. I'm certainly not blaming that person. I'd suggest that it's a bit simplistic to blame officers who were in that area doing their job and who I can tell you did nothing out of their training in this incident. So I don't know what that answer is. I've told my officers we need to be extraordinarily empathetic to our public for the foreseeable future, more so even than usual, and we demand that every day. That we've got to have a thicker professional skin, even than normal, and that we've got to let people talk to us and talk through with them, not to them, but with them, what's happened here, and we'll all try to make sense of it.
Are they hearing from people on the streets when they're out working their beats?
Well, they do every day, Alicia, of course. Yes, they are. And frankly, that might be the best thing that can happen, is to have people talking to people, which is that relationship thing again, at least in my view, my opinion. But yes, they are. And, some people are expressing support, whatever that means, for the police department. Again, this is a community issue in my view. Other people are questioning, asking some hard questions of how could this happen, what's going on. And the officers are, like me, they don't have all the information like you. They don't have all the information, but they're doing, I guess, what we're doing right now. They're trying to talk through this and come to some understanding of what happened.
You mentioned that. How are the officers who were involved handling this? Can you give me more detail?
Again, I don't like to talk specifics for reasons that they are personnel matters, but the officers were devastated that this happened. You put yourself in their position. How would you feel if this happened to someone that you'd been talking with 30 seconds before? They suddenly fall out, and you carry them up. Call an ambulance to come get them. You do what you can to try to help them. And then the person, unfortunately, dies. It's devastating. Any of us who've ever watched someone die, you don't forget that. And it's difficult to explain unless you have.
You may have said this before I got here, but are you able to say if anybody at this point is on administrative leave, or is everybody still...
I appreciate that, Tim. I'll be glad to answer that question. No, I have not deemed this situation. I've reviewed what I know about this incident. I've talked to these officers. I see no cause to put anyone on administrative leave. They are on light-duty assignments. Quite frankly, they're being interviewed by state police representatives, and frankly, I'm trying to let them get their heads back together after this shock. So they will be away from regular duties for a period of time. But unless I find out something I don't know now, I see no reason to put them on administrative leave other than in case they need it for their own recovery time.
How many officers is that?
There were 8 officers approximately involved by the time backup officers arrived. When officers announced that someone was fleeing the scene, other officers came. I believe we started with approximately 3 or 4 officers attempting to serve warrants, as I mentioned before. Other officers came to assist. So I believe we ended up with about 8 officers at the scene. How many of those officers were directly in contact with Mr. Martin at any particular period, quite honestly, I don't know at this point.
Can you tell us a little bit about the decision to put the ER on lockdown that night?
Again, I have to copy what the mayor said. Centra Health has protocols on doing that. I don't know exactly what those protocols are. I'd suggest you speak to them about that. I simply don't know, Alicia. I'm sorry.
Did they tell us if they did it?
I believe they had told us, Diane Riley, their spokeswoman, said that they did it at the police's request or suggestion.
Yeah, I did not request it. Again, I just don't know.
What would you say to those in that area who say that they couldn't understand why it took so many officers to apprehend or to maintain the gentleman, and thinking it was, hey, why did they have to have so many people for one guy?
They didn't. Again, a typical procedure, and I'm not talking about that incident. Frankly, I wasn't there. When I would go to serve an arrest warrant, which is what this situation was, typically we would have someone surround the structure in case someone decided not to accept being arrested on the warrant. So I believe that was why we had 3 to 4 officers there. There were a couple of officers, I think, to go around the back of the residence. And again, I'll mention that the person we were looking for was never located there. We don't know if he was there or not. We had reliable information that he was. There are 2 arrest warrants for that person, whose name we released to the press, I believe, on Wednesday, if I remember correctly. And again, that's the situation. The other officers had arrived on the scene and simply didn't leave. They were afraid they might be needed. It took 4 officers to carry Mr. Martin from the point, I understand it was a few yards short of Tulip Street, where they'd walked back out of the woods where he had run. When he collapsed, they picked him up and carried him, so it took 4 of them to do that. And other than that, it didn't take that many to restrain him in any way. They just happened to be there, and I guess they didn't want to leave. They were hoping they could be of some assistance. There were officers talking to medic unit personnel. There were officers attempting to assist Mr. Martin, and officers clearing the way for the ambulance to get there. So that's what they were doing at this time.
The police department put together a report in the wake of Officer Hilber's shooting, reaffirming some techniques that y'all employ to safely deliver warrants. As far as you understand, were those procedures followed?
Yes. Slight semantic, perhaps, difference. In that situation on McCausland Ridge, we were talking about a search warrant for a property. In this case, we had arrest warrants for an individual. They are still warrants. They are legal service. Police officers serve them. So in that sense, there's not much difference, but slightly different situation. The search of a property typically is a more complex undertaken in the sense that Alicia herself could take me into custody on a warrant so long as I was willing to surrender myself to her. So it doesn't take, in most situations, quite as many people to serve a warrant unless there's some belief that the person will not voluntarily comply with that document. Did that answer your question, Steve? This situation, there are warrants, but there are differences in that.
Then let me phrase it more simply. Do you believe that police procedure was followed?
Yes, I do. I see no reason, based on what information I have at this time, to see that any procedure we have, and we follow best practices. As you know, we're a nationally accredited police department, and a good example of a police department, even in that select grouping. We did what we believe best practices are in this situation. Again, I guess it's a good time to mention that any activity involving community policing or law enforcement or first response does not necessarily go as anyone anticipates it. That's why we say there's no such thing as a routine call or a routine matter. This is certainly a classic example of that. No one saw this as a routine matter, but it just goes to show that you don't know what will happen. Police officers have elaborate procedures, a lot of training, and we reinforce it constantly as to the best practices, what to do in a situation. The reason we do that, obviously, is to try to impose what order we can on situations that aren't scripted and that can go in any direction.
I just wanted to go over again one more time the process of how the taser activity is monitored, and I'm sorry, this is just my ignorance, but when a taser is fired, there's a computer signal that's sent back to a third-party vendor who records it and has that record and is able to give it to you? Is that right? Actually,
and I don't mean to say that I'm the taser expert either, Alicia, so let me make that very clear. It's the system itself, much like your phone or any other computerized device, and I use the word computerized device in the terms of someone who was born in 1959. I'm certainly not a technical generation person. So the information is actually stored, like our phones, within the device itself and can be accessed. In other words, in your cell phone, I know more about cell phones than I do about that, you'd plug in your cord, hook it up to a computer, and it would read the device and tell you certain information. It's the same way with tasers, is my understanding.
And that reading was conducted by the police department?
It was. We have Taser International, I believe, is our vendor for tasers. They train various members of our staff. I think we have 4 people trained as taser instructors who are capable of also maintaining the devices, downloading information from them, and that sort of thing.
What about the time of the time period as far as giving care to Mr. Martin? Some out there seem to think that it took a long time for him to get some kind of medical attention.
My understanding, and I don't know the detailed information, Andre, but my understanding is that the officers were talking to Mr. Martin back out of the wooded area that he ran into. He had surrendered voluntarily to the police officers. That they were having a conversation. That's when the officers discovered that Mr. Martin was not the person on whom they had the warrants when he identified himself to them. As he was walking back, the officers became concerned that he was becoming lethargic, is the term they used in speaking to me, and was beginning to have, it appeared, difficulty in walking. At that point, and this is well before he collapsed, they called for an ambulance to come and check on him. When they neared Tulip Street, the ambulance, I believe, was already en route at that point. Mr. Martin, according to the officers, collapsed. They picked him up, carried him to a grassy area up on Tulip Street, is my understanding. And simply, as soon as he collapsed, called the ambulance and said, "This is now an emergency situation. Get over here as quickly as you can," which, of course, the medic unit did. How long that was, I do not know at this point.
Okay, I'm good.
And did that cover?
That's all my questions.